Hi there, I'm Mary Monahan, and with me is Bill Dwight, and we're back having another discussion about Holyoke's infrastructure. But today we brought some friends along with us, and these friends are members of the Holyoke's Long-Term Service Agreement Advisory Committee. And don't let that scare you, it's some really cool stuff we've got to talk about today. And it's definitely something that you and the rest of us need to be paying attention to because of its ability to positively impact Holyoke's future. So Bill, we talked a little bit about this before we went live here, about our wastewater operation and the existing long-term service agreement, and what we've got looking at us next.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that we discussed before is that in your search, you're not looking for someone to maintain status quo. You want a vendor who has vision, and vision that actually corresponds with the vision that Holyoke has for itself. And that vision means you're aspiring, you have hope, and this is what you're looking for toward the future, as opposed to having something that just guarantees you can flush your toilet on any given day. So this is a significant step, and if this is the time that Holyoke should invest not just money, but its thoughts and hopes into what this will mean for them going forward.
Sure, and with that, the thoughts and hopes. We've been lucky, meaning DPW and the Board of Public Works, to reach out, identify, and get the support of residents in the community that bring their specific expertise to the table. Again, right now we have a long-term service agreement that takes care of the operations at the plant. And what we're looking for in the future is to build on those operations, bring in new technology, make sure our water quality standards, stay up to par, also generate revenue and reduce costs. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce two of the members of our advisory committee. We have with us Mimi Panitch, and we also have Andy Fiske. So beginning with Mimi, I'm going to let you introduce yourself a little bit and talk about what you think about as the chair of the planning board and how this long-term service agreement fits in with your economic development and planning initiatives.
Tiny topic, which I think
okay, yes.
in 30 seconds. But yeah, I'm Mimi Panitch. I am the chair of the planning board at the moment. And this is a really interesting opportunity because just flushing your toilet, look, that is fundamental to civilization. And 20 years ago or so, Holyoke was pushed by the EPA into facing the future and facing the fact that what worked in the 18th, 19th century, which is just flushing things into the river, was not acceptable at the dawn of the 21st century. And the current service agreement, as I came to understand it, comes out of that recognition and the fact that we did have combined sewer overflows that could not be allowed to continue. You see them, the alerts the DPW sends out now when we have a bad rainstorm. Yeah, we are still having those sewer overflows and they're still bad, but the volume of what we were putting into the river is nothing like what it was back before this original service agreement. But 20 years have gone by, the world is changing really rapidly around us, and technology for this is changing. We are dealing not only with the old problems of, all right, we are not going to be pumping sewage into the river, but new ones, chemicals that everybody thought were benign back in the old days that now have to be cleaned up because we paid no attention to them. The fact that we have things like anaerobic digesters, which the professionals here will talk about, no doubt, which we didn't have 20 years ago. But we can rebuild Holyoke to be a state-of-the-art city, in part because we did neglect it for so long. We don't have things that can be patched up with baling wire and limp along. We have to bring them up to a high standard. And in addition to that, this year, our new mayor managed to pull together the funding for us to do the first master plan, or as we now call them, comprehensive plan for Holyoke, in over 20 years. and it is long, long overdue. So part of what we're looking at the planning board is how we loop in the infrastructure improvements that we need or that we just dream about, so that we can have a plan going forward that will just continue to bring the city back.
Sure, and that's great, because Bill and I have talked a lot about that, how our infrastructure is a basis for economic development.
Yeah.
And through the planning board and master planning process, that's going to be memorialized. And so Andy, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your thoughts about this.
Yeah, thanks for letting me be part of the conversation. I'm Andy Fiske. I'm a Holyoke resident. My son and daughter-in-law also live here, and my in-laws moved here. So we relocated to Holyoke because I love the city. It's a place whose history is really based on innovation, and it's got a great connection to the river. So my day job is I'm the Northeast Regional Director for American Rivers. We're a national nonprofit that works from the headwaters of rivers across the country all the way down to the ocean. And we work because all life depends on rivers and water. So I come at this from both a professional and a personal commitment. I am deeply committed to the Connecticut River in my hometown. I spend a lot of time on the river, both swimming, boating, and just taking pleasure from it. And Mimi, as you noticed, we've done a tremendous amount to improve the water quality in Holyoke. And so I think that our water and wastewater infrastructure, it is about economic development, and it's also about quality of life. It is an incredibly important part of the architecture of a healthy city, and the opportunity to be able to think about how we operate it so that we improve environmental outcomes, how we make our community safer, because we're living in a changed climate. We have to be able to figure out what we do with rainwater and stormwater. And I think this opportunity is also a way to think about what we call wastewater treatment. And I would challenge us to think about that and think about what does a wastewater treatment plant do? It actually makes clean water, right? And so we're actually producing a product, right? And so to what standards and to what end and for who? And I think it's an incredibly exciting opportunity to be able to think about that. And I'm really excited to be given that opportunity to be part of this group and think big and think long term.
Okay, thank you. And
Well, Andy, you identified, both you and Mimi identified the fact that the value the river has for us, and Holyoke wouldn't exist without that river. And in fact, none of the cities and communities up and down the Connecticut River Valley would exist. There was no reason for them to be. And that's even going back to indigenous peoples. They all came here because of the river. But it was always considered as a system for exploitation. It was one that we would use and subsequently abuse. I mean, I grew up in Holyoke swimming in the river when we were screamed at not to go in that water because it will kill you. So far I survived, obviously, but the fact is that we've made considerable strides to try and compensate for past sins.
Yeah.
And that's essentially, I think, what you identified as one of the bigger challenges we're facing now. How do we manage the water that will, by all projections with subsequent climate change, will increase significantly as the climate changes, and we're likely to see that, as we've seen it progressing over the years, to become a bigger and bigger problem. And so I assume that figures in your calculus when you guys have your discussions about what it is you're looking for in a contractor who will go beyond just maintaining status quo. Do you guys have any other sense of urgencies other than the one identifying those? Arguably that's enough, but things that, for instance, if I'm sitting home watching this, what are the things that would trigger me, you think, that would trigger me to be more engaged and more active in these conversations?
I think recognizing that a clean river has a tremendous amount of benefits, right? And people recognizing the fact that when you go down to the river or you're near water, what does that mean to you? How does it make you feel, right? People take emotional sustenance from water and particularly flowing rivers, And so for the public to remember what a river has meant to them, like remember that little ping, and then recognize that it's going to take a lot of work and investment to continue to maintain the gains we have, but then continue to think expansively, right? And so think about, we actually have a factory that makes clean water, right? It's not wastewater treatment. We make clean water. Well, continue that idea around economic development, and then put it more broadly. What do we do with a lot of our waste? Let's think about food waste, right? There are tremendous opportunities for a facility like what we used to call a wastewater treatment plant to also generate electricity, right? And so the point of anaerobic digestion, the state of Massachusetts prohibits the disposal of food waste in landfills. Why? It's a fuel source, right? And so if you now think about a place that generates, it makes clean water, it makes energy, it provides for economic development, wow, that's a real cornerstone piece of a community that you go from that point of, I love my river.
Yep.
Pull the thread, you know, and then think about what we can build as a factory, right?
Yeah, and so what we've done in relation to that is our advisory board has gone on the road and taken a road trip to the Deer Island facility in Boston.
Right.
Okay, so we can look at, you know, granted they're much larger than what Holyoke's plant is, but it does the same thing.
Sure.
So they've looked at energy generation through anaerobic digesters. They've looked at food waste as a fuel source. And also food waste provides more efficiency actually in the treatment of the waste too. Right. So it actually improves and accelerates that process. And at the Deer Island facility, they also turn their sludge into a marketable product.
Right.
You know, PFAS, which everyone's read about, but it's a contaminant that's located in our sludge right now. It's actually almost global within our area, but that's a technology that needs to be addressed with respect to removing it or managing it in that. But the good news for Holyoke is we're 18 years into a 20-year contract with technologies that are 18 years old. This is an opportunity to look at new technologies that can address those concerns of PFAS and other contaminants that might be in our wastewater discharge, the clean water, as well as in our sludge. And back to our factory. We've got capacity to take in more disposal, which brings in tipping fees. We've got the capacity to generate more power as a result of we've got more fuel going through the system. And so that's part of what this advisory group wants to look at.
And if I can just back up
Sure,
to,
please.
I think, address your point, is why should people be excited about this? People should be excited about this because, you know, we get into all of these technical details, but what this is about, the river and our water systems connect to everything about the way the city operates. And if we make this work, it is part of, we have a beautiful canal system. And in other cities, in our city, if we play our cards right, that is a place where people congregate, where they love to spend time. It can be beautiful, it can be a community center, it can be what you boast of when you say you're from Holyoke. And benefits like that just multiply outward. We can make this a revenue source rather than a revenue sink. We can use it to create a city of the future. And I think that's a really exciting prospect. You know, it's not just we sit here with spreadsheets trying to figure out how to make it work. This is an adventure, and it's an adventure for an entire city to take part in. And that's why you should be interested. You get down in the weeds, and it opens up like a flower when you start really looking at it.
That's a perfect analogy, I think. The Holyoke is, of course, distinguished itself historically as being virtually energy autonomous, had their own energy generating systems. Now, it also had the Mount Tom power plant, which was a coal-fired plant, which is closed, and it's a good thing. What you guys are talking about with the digester is an alternative source of energy that actually has benefits. Not just the power. I mean, the power is a given benefit, but the benefit of more efficient processing and cleansing of the water, but also offsetting costs associated with the energy generation. I mean, we talked about this before. You know, I remember growing up in the big Northeast blackout and being horribly disappointed sitting in Holyoke and looking out the window across the river at South Hadley, which was completely black, and we had all the power we needed. And I was disappointed. Now, if that were to happen
Still
to
had
me
to go to
now,
school.
yes, and that's the thing. That's an asset that Holyoke is. In many respects, a lot of people in Holyoke have underappreciated, and certainly people regionally have underappreciated. And we were discussing regional influences and regional impacts and regional benefits. Holyoke has, as you said, Mimi, the canal system, which also was a energy generation system. That's why it was designed. It was to power all those plants.
Yeah, the old water wheels are beautiful. I was really
They're
sorry when they
stunning.
stopped using some of them.
Yeah, but the means to generate power through those canal systems still exist. I mean, and I think, you know, what we're saying is that with optimism as opposed to a certain pessimism that these things are usually approached with, the potential is enormous and unrecognized. And you guys have an opportunity to take that for a ride and to promote the opening of the flower.
That was a good analogy.
And part of it, see, if you think about how Holyoke became a city of innovation, right? It brought talent and expertise and ideas from a lot of places. And so I think one of the opportunities we have is we put this vision forward that says we're going to be responsible with the public's money. We're going to be pushing for high environmental standards. We're going to be pushing for additional outcomes like energy generation and the like. Well, who's going to help us do that, right? And so one of the opportunities is to put that call out to the wider world and say there are very sophisticated firms and individuals that can help us implement that. And that's part of the exciting part about
Definitely.
this. Tell us how you firm and you firm and you firm are going to meet this vision, because we can be really ambitious and have a lot of these criteria that isn't just about make the stuff go away, because that's what it was like before.
Right.
Now we're much more sophisticated in what our outcomes and what we want the results to be. And there's firms out there that have a tremendous record. Let's get a bunch of them. Let's have them put their proposals on the table and see who can get the best deal to meet this vision for the city of Holyoke.
So what we've been doing is actually letting these global entities know that, hey, there's an opportunity coming, not just for the city of Holyoke, but for them. And several of them have stepped up and met with us and gave us really neat PowerPoint presentations and, you know, gave us some really cool ideas about considerations with respect to the city of Holyoke. And one of my takeaways from all this has always been to these firms and anyone who wants to listen to me is those really good PowerPoint presentations of those operations that you're using as a model. I'd like Holyoke to be on a future PowerPoint presentation of showing this is how you can make things happen well.
It's a buyer's market.
And
That's important to note, because these companies, they recognize Holyoke's infrastructure, like where it's located, what's here. And the other part of it is the ideas we're talking about, they're not out on the margins. This is like central for these firms to be able to do work around the world and the country, and they want to do the work and they want to demonstrate it. And so you're right, Mary, they can put Holyoke up on those PowerPoints and say, look at the stuff that we're doing here. We're investing. We can get a good deal. They can be putting really innovative ideas forward because it's in their interest, right?
Correct. all of the ability for revenue generation not only benefits our taxpayer and ratepayers, but, you know, again, in the right contract terms, it's a sharing of success. And you know, we want a partner. We want someone who, again, you noted, shares that same vision. And they are global firms. This is contract operations can be looked at as an alternative project delivery system. And many of these firms have already been doing this for years globally. And, you know, they've learned a lot from it. We're Holyoke, which that's a cool thing, but we don't have that global expertise. So it's back to what you said. You show us, you know, don't wait for us to figure this out on our own. We'll get there, but we need their input.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good time for us to be out there too. Just by pure coincidence, now is a time of huge ferment in the technology. You can see it practically changing in front of you, and any firm that wants to get out ahead, this is a perfect demonstration opportunity. Show us what you can do, show us what's new. We aren't going to get locked into yesterday's technology because we had to deal with this too quickly. And I think there's a good chance that we've just hit the sweet spot on that technology curve. And by the time we finalize this, we will be ahead of everybody else in the country.
Mimi, you just sort of touched on also the sense of urgency that sort of drives a lot of this, and I think your point is correct, that don't make rash or expedient choices based on that urgency, but the fact is that I would assume is ever present as you guys have your discussions and try to figure out what's the best way to proceed. And the urgency, of course, is driven by the manifesting issues of climate change and how it's impacted our communities. But not only that, you have federal mandates and state mandates that you guys that sit over your head like a piano hanging from a string. How do you reconcile those two issues? The fact that there is that urgency, that drive, the need to address these things, and incorporate the visions that we were just discussing, or the aspirations?
Well, I think we have a little time, and we have to have a little time, because we are still under contract. And we are working out when we will have to move. But I think we just keep talking to people and sharing the vision. And from my point of view at least, I think we're talking about trying to hit that perfect point where things, the research has panned out enough. You are not, as it were, moving to a whole line of chips before you've had a chance to see whether they're actually going to explode or not. We're going for the 01 version rather than the 00 version. But we have just enough time, it looks like, as we talk to the experts. The ones that I at least have been able to talk to since I joined the group are all saying the same things, which is, a year, 2 years, 3 years. This is all moving, and we don't know exactly where it will settle yet, but that's our time frame. And I think we're growing up along with them.
Sure, and you noted the group. So for clarification, we're an informal group. We're an ad hoc committee, and we welcome others to join us. There are others that are on this committee, that in ad hoc committee, that bring other expertise to the table. We have folks that know our infrastructure already in the city, so they're able to talk to that. We have others that, one proclaims himself as a contract geek, so he's digging deep into the weeds. Recently, the City Council has approved funding for an attorney, and the Board of Public Works has entered into negotiations for a scope of work with this attorney to help us out with respect to what are our contractual guardrails that we need to follow. We've had a consulting firm that's been working with the city that's giving us some insight into existing operations there so that we can jump off of those and let any new firm that would be interested in working with the city know exactly what current conditions are. So we're moving forward rapidly in the sense of this is a big deal. Again, a long-term commitment by the city. It's still going to be a significant cost, and we're looking for the new operation to offset those costs with energy generation, with development of a product that probably has a retail value, and the opportunity to expand our user base. Right now, we've got a discussion in the city about sewer rates, and we'd love to get to the point where instead of looking at the sewer rate as the revenue source and continuing to affect our existing ratepayer pool, let's expand it. We've got 50% capacity. Let's get new industrial dischargers interested in the city that need that capacity. So all of this is part of that discussion, and what I'd like to introduce and throw out to the public is, if you're interested in working with this ad hoc group, if you've got something you want to offer, feel free to reach out. We do have a Gmail address now, Bill?
There you go.
Okay, yeah, so there's a means of communicating with us at holyokeinfrastructure@gmail.com, and there'll be a banner scrolling across the bottom of the screen when you're viewing this. So would you want to share any concluding comments that you had for the public, for us, and for anyone who wants to join our little team here?
Your merry band.
There you go. There you go. Everything is better with more input. So again, it's an amazing opportunity to think big, and under the leadership of the mayor and the support of the city council, we've been given the tools to be able to do the work. It's an honor. And I think, Bill, your question about that piano hanging over, I think the state and federal government, and again, I spent 8 years in state government administering permits and regulations and contracting and funding. We see the short and long-term goalposts out there, and I think the state particularly has been clear, as long as we know you've got a roadmap, they're going to let you go that direction. There's some tough challenges out there, but I think we don't have to be blinkered by that proverbial piano. I think the city's done a great job saying, here's the roadmap for the combined sewer overflows, and the idea really is to have that plan. And if it's a coherent plan, we're going to have the space to be able to do that, and they will respond well to, I think, to the way we're thinking. I know if I was in my old seat, I would be saying, keep going. So
That's good to hear. Mimi.
No, I can't top that. I'm going to just what Andy said.
Okay.
But no, government is more fun than you think. Come and get a behind-the-scenes look. And it will benefit you, it will benefit all of your neighbors, just knowing what's going on. We don't have newspapers, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes unless you get involved. And I would say that alone is worth the price of admission.
it's a great bumper sticker. Government is more fun than you think.
I like that, yeah.
I'm going to get one.
Okay. Bill and I, our first recording, we self-identified as municipal wonks here,
Yes.
because this is fun.
Yeah, fun's an interesting way to describe it. I would say
No, but
it's actually,
fixing
it has
things.
sustenance, it's value. It has value. You feel like, okay, having fun is playing Angry Birds or something, but this is actually something that you get to step back and acknowledge your contribution to your community and to yourself if you want to be more selfish about it.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely
But also,
right.
figuring things out, I think, is just something human beings do. We like it when we can figure things out and make them work. And this is a huge, complicated project that takes a lot of minds and hands on it. But you make it work, and it's fun, and it's rewarding. You just, I don't know, you get a score on Angry Birds and it's gone.
Yeah.
You get a score on
right.
this, it sticks around forever.
Sure, and this is, again, we've got that 20-year timeline. So this is a unique opportunity, and it's going to help set the playing field for where Holyoke will be going. So, do you have any closing remarks,
Well,
Bill?
to that point, people have done this before us. It's why you actually have the community that Andy wants to live in and Mimi wants to live in and that I grew up in and you grew up in. The reason it exists is because there were people who made these contributions. Now, most of them were fat cats with certain notions of individual personal benefits. This is something that's a little more substantive and valuable insofar as community members who aren't going to get rich off of any of the decisions that are rendered here. Only rich in the fact that their community will be enhanced and improved, and and hopefully start to address the challenges that Holyoke faces day in and day out. So I'm really grateful for the conversation. I'm grateful for your contributions. And I hope there are other people who want to join your dark cult.
Yeah, and Mimi and Andy, again, thank you so much for what you shared.
Sure.
And again, back to the viewers here. We welcome you participating with us. And if you have any questions, you want to volunteer, again, we now have an email address at holyokeinfrastructure@gmail.com. So please reach out and let us know your willingness to join this team. Thank you.